Hi everyone, how's it going today? My name is Muhammad Ali. I am President and CEO of Core Gems, and in front of me today we have 5 beautiful stones, but only 2 of them are actually rubies. So, we're going to zoom in on each one and see if you can figure out which ones are the real deal and which ones are pretenders. Take a look at this stone first, then we'll take a look at this one, then we'll take a look at this one, then we'll take a look at this one, and then we'll take a look at this one. So, 5 stones, they all look nice and pretty, but only 2 are the real deal. Only 2 are actually ruby. And one is sort of ruby. What I mean by one is sort of ruby is one is ruby, technically, but it's filled with glass. Up to 20% of its weight might be glass, maybe even more. This is known as lead glass filled. This will often be marked as clarity enhanced or treated ruby. And to be honest, it's not really ruby. No gem collector considers it ruby. No jeweler considers it ruby. That's worth their salt anyway. It's basically rock that is corundum, which is like the same family as ruby, that's been pumped full of gas to make it look shiny and pretty. It's not true ruby. GIA will not identify it as ruby. It will say composite material or composite something or composite ruby, depending on which lab report. Now, the way to tell it's fairly doable when it comes to lead glass filled. If you have a little microscope or some sort of loop like that, and you take a look, you'll see little gas bubbles. You can see right there, little bubbles like that. And it takes a little bit of training because there are natural bubbles as well. And you have to maybe check online and see, lead glass filled inclusions, what they look like, and then do a little comparison. But you can get a good idea. It's not easy to identify. It does take practice. It does take some experience, but you should be able to get a pretty good idea of whether it's a lead glass filled ruby or not just by looking at it through a loop or a microscope or a magnifying glass of some sort. So get rid of that. You're not a true ruby. Now, one of these isn't ruby at all. So 2 of these are natural rubies. One is a synthetic ruby and one is not ruby at all. So here we have a UV light. You can get these for $3-4 on eBay. They are pretty awesome. And if you shine it on here, you will see that this glows. Well, maybe I'll turn the light off so you guys can see a bit better. So just dim the lights, but you would want to do this in complete darkness. As you can see, this one glows with the UV light. This one glows with the UV light. It may not be super obvious, but it will be if you use it in real life. This one glows with UV light, but what? This one does not. The reason that this one does not glow with a UV light is because this is not ruby at all. It's rhodolite garnet, a very dark rhodolite garnet actually. It's an okay stone and really has major color problems, but it is clean and not bad looking. But at the end of the day, it's not ruby. It sells for maybe 50, $100 a carat, whereas ruby is thousands, or at the very least several hundreds. Now we're left with 3 stones that are technically ruby. They pass the UV light test. They do have, UV glow, but they are not all natural. 2 out of 3 of these are natural, and one is not, and this one is not. Now, this is a bit trickier, and really you need to know the type of synthetic you're looking for in order to tell whether it is, created or not. If you look at this with a little magnifying glass or a loop of some sort, for this specific type of ruby, for this specific type of synthetic, it has a really pitted surface, which you will not see in natural ruby. It has a lot of little bumps, and the surface just feels a bit different compared to a natural ruby. And this is created using the flux method, where they basically grow corundum crystal and add chromium and other elements to it to give that red color. Excuse me, and it's just synthetic. Now, how do I know these are natural rubies? Well, at the end of the day, there's only one way to know for sure, and that is to send it to a reputable lab. So I have a GIL identification for this ruby over here, and what I'm covering up right now is the treatment. Why am I covering up the treatment? Because I want you guys to guess at which of these two is heated and or unheated. One of these is heated and one of these is unheated. I'm not going to say which one. This is pretty much impossible to tell without sending it to a lab. And it doesn't have to be a high-end lab or a super lab. I know here in Toronto we have accurate gem labs. We have reasonably priced local labs that will be able to identify whether a stone is treated and heat treatment on ruby and stuff like that. And we also have, Canadian Gemological Laboratories, CGL, GRS. The best of the best is, of course, GIA. And this is what a GIA report looks like. It comes with this full report here, which will include a picture, and it will include the treatment. So yes, this stone is the heated one. And if you request an origin, it will give you the origin. If it, or it'll say cannot be determined or whatever. GIA is the gold standard. By far, GIA is the authority. GIA is who everyone else bases their information on. GIA is king. If you want, maybe the most expensive labs are Gublin and a couple others in Europe. GRS is a little bit pricier than GIA, but not by much. SSEF is very expensive as well. Gublin and SSEF are probably going to be your priciest labs. GIA for a normal ruby report, 70, 90, 100, 120. If you're shipping it to them, it can get quite pricey, so I'd recommend doing a few reports at once. But at the end of the day, nothing really beats a GIA report. It is the gold standard. It is the authority, and it's not overly expensive when it comes to gem reports. There are much pricier reports. Great value, globally recognized. I would recommend GIA. Something like GIL here, I do trust them for the most part, but for example, to sell this stone, I would send it to IGI in New York. IGI is a bit cheaper than GIA. And they would give me a little report and identification, and I could use that and sell the stone. I might send it to GI, I'm not really sure at this point, but I wouldn't use something like GIL. Like that doesn't meet the core gems quality standards, basically. Yeah, so to summarize, to identify lead glass filled ruby, look for glass bubbles. To identify rhodolite, check with UV. You can get them for $4 or $5 on eBay. To check for synthetic ruby, look at it with a loupe and look at natural ruby inclusions and natural ruby surface blemishes, and compare. One thing to note is just if